Hello and welcome to this 8th video, the 8th focus of our journey as Haxby and Wigginton Methodist Church with the Methodist way of life. Today we're going to spend some time looking back at what these last 3 months of exploring have been for us and what we've said about ourselves. In some ways the last 3 months have been a new beginning for us. We've read and looked and listened, we've talked and prayed and practiced our way through these commitments, these 12 commitments that unpack our calling, the Methodist Church's priorities. And that together, as a group, give us a quite comprehensive set of practices that shape and direct our following of Jesus. 2 weeks ago, having looked at the 4 blocks of commitments in the previous 4 sessions, 2 weeks ago, I asked you to reflect on your personal journey with these commitments. In our church, we asked people to spend time. It was a fortnight to do that, in conversation, in prayer, in just sitting, thinking, reflecting, maybe journaling, asking what the lessons have been for them, where the encounters have been, the surprises. And that video is available if you'd like to watch it, Focus 7. But today we're going to spend some time looking at what we've said together about who we are, who we think we are in our Christ following, and who we want to become. And most of this video, you won't see my face, you'll see rather some slides that I've prepared and used in church to share some of the insights of what we've said about ourselves. So we're going to have a look at some of those now. So what have we said about ourselves? Well, when we began this journey, we began it using this image, this map. A symbolic representation of the 12 promises, each with a word, and then a brief statement that unpacks that word, looking at the different elements of our calling. Worship, learning and caring, service and evangelism. And those words, that map, and those challenges, those commitments are familiar to us in our church's life. We have a large copy of that map down on the floor in our entrance hub, and people have been walking around in it, walking over it, spending some time with it. And along the wall on the left hand side, they were put up since this image was taken, there were sheets available for people to use to put stickers on, to express something of where they were with each of those commitments. We used these stickers to chart our journey. A sticker that said this feels like home, a sticker that said I'm exploring this, and one that said this scares me. They were anonymous, anyone could put one up at any point, and the invitation was there to do that as part of us looking back, as we're doing today and will continue to do in our church's life, asking who we are, what we've said we're good at, what we've said we're interested and curious about, and what we've said scares us most. And these are some of the sheets that have been filled in. There were 12 sheets, they're not all on the page, but you get an idea of the kind of spread of stickers and how people use them in the course of our church's life. So we're going to look at some images, some graphs really, some ways of looking at what we've said. In each of those 4 categories, worship, learning and caring, service and evangelism, I've made a representation of each of the groups of stickers in those. Don't worry too much about the numbers necessarily, but just look at the proportions as they go across. Worship, learning and caring, service and evangelism. This is what feels like home, and it's quite clear in our church that we are comfortable in a service, a helping, a caring environment. We'll come on to some of the others in a bit. But that's what we said feels like home for us. This is what scares us. Not that much concern or anxiety about worship, learning and caring and service, but evangelism by far the majority. By far. And then in terms of what people said they wanted to explore, we had some exploring cards for each of those commitments. There was a card with a commitment on it, and with 3 or 4 or 5 just simple things to try, to do, to practice, to explore that particular commitment. And these were the levels of interest in that, shown in the stickers. Now, I found it very heartening, and I think our church did when looking at these numbers, to see that the thing we're most afraid of is also the thing we're most curious to explore. That we know we need to do that. But also there's something about, we believe, what God is saying to us in all of this. That God has been speaking into our life, and God has been directing some of our curiosity, nudging us in directions that don't feel comfortable, but that feel important, necessary, and part of us balancing the way that our church expresses itself, within itself and towards the community. So a very positive result in that respect. And then there were these exploring cards, little cards with, as I've said, a few commitments, a few practices for each of the commitments on them. There were over 1,000 available. There were 90 for each, and over 500 were taken. Nearly half of those cards were taken from the place where they were left in the church. So lots of people took lots of things to look at and explore. And in the proportions of what was taken, worship, learning and caring, service, and evangelism. So far more of the worship and learning and caring cards were taken than service or evangelism. Now that might be because the service and evangelism cards only became available about halfway through our exercise. But they were there, and people took them. Over 500 of them. One of the curiosities, one of the questions for us to think about is that when it came to cards being taken compared to stickers actually being used. So the idea was when you take a card, you try one or two things. You don't have to perfect them. You don't have to get it right even. You just try. And then once you've done that, you come back and stick a sticker on that says, I'm exploring this. There were only 82 stickers on the sheets in total across all 12 commitments from over 500 cards taken. And I guess for us as a church, one of the questions for us to spend some time with is what does that indicate? Were we intimidated by the practices? Do we not feel that we did them well enough to stick a sticker up? Does that feel like we needed to complete them or perfect them or get them right before we could say that we're exploring? That's an ongoing question for us that is really about our tendency to perfectionism within the church. As much as our following of Jesus is about giving of our best, sometimes it feels as though, unless we're absolutely sure that it's our best, we can't name it as ministry or as a gift to God in the building of God's kingdom. But look at the differences here in the stickers that we used. The actual stickers used. Just over a quarter in worship. Quite a small slice in learning and caring. A big chunk in service. But by far the most stickers that we used were in evangelism. Over a third of the exploring stickers were placed in the 3 evangelism commitments. So it seems in our church we want to go there. We know we need to, and we've said so together in this exercise. And that's heartening. There were also a few interesting results for us. A few results that give us some reason to scratch our heads. Perhaps focus our life going forward, because the purpose of this exercise hasn't been to audit how good we are at everything, but to ask what we are good at and how we can build that, to ask what we're most curious about and how we can explore that, and to ask what we're perhaps most afraid of, and see what we might do about dismantling or facing, even just ploughing through some of that fear, whether it be about confidence or skills, whatever it may be. So there were a few interesting results. The commitment, we will live in a way that draws others to Jesus, was something that very few people felt at home in. There was a reasonable amount of fear towards that, but it was by far the commitment had the most exploring stickers. And that commitment is not so much about speaking about our faith. The commitment we were most afraid of was we will share our faith with others. It was more than double the next one. 18 out of 43 stickers in the evangelism section were about sharing our faith with others. But that's about talking. That's about perhaps our lack of confidence to know what we would say. But living in a way that draws others to Jesus in the whole of life was something that we were most curious about. And again, for our church, that's reason to take heart. The 3 evangelism commitments had the lowest numbers together of, well, individually and then together, the lowest numbers of these places, these commitments feeling like home. So they were the 3 lowest, and together obviously the lowest across the 4 commitments of the 4 priorities of our church. But the next lowest was this one: we will challenge injustice. And it was something that some people admitted they were fearful about, but it was also the next most curious. It was the thing we were next most curious about after the evangelism questions that were there for us. And in our church's life, I think we know that the way that we go about being a church that works for justice is central to our future. It's essential as one of the questions of our integrity as we follow Jesus. We will pray daily. In the worship category, it was quite evident that not that many of us felt confident about this commitment. We will pray daily. And perhaps for some people, that's about the word daily. And even as we began this series, and as we looked at that focus, I think it was in focus 2, I said quite clearly, perhaps regularly would be a better word for us. But either way, consistent experience of what feels like praying is something that our church doesn't seem to feel confident about. It was frightening for some people, but it was also something that we were curious about. It was, along with the challenging of injustice, it was the commitment we were most curious about after we will live in a way that draws others to Jesus. It's very heartening, I think, and very clear that in our church's life, the things that we are least confident in and the things that we are in some ways most fearful of, the things that we feel most nudged to move forward in. And so it doesn't seem that we're avoiding these things, but perhaps we're not sure what to do next. And that's where the work of our life going forward comes in. The one surprise for me that I'm perhaps most disheartened by, there's so much positive in all of these results, but the commitment that says we will learn more about our faith. There were a reasonable number who felt at home. No one felt afraid of it. There were no fear stickers, but there were just 3 stickers that said, I'm exploring this. So across a community roll of 350 people and a membership of over 200, there were 13 stickers in We Will Learn More About Our Faith. 10 of them, people who felt at home there, but only 3 who really said, this is something I want to continue exploring. This is something I want to build in the life of my journey with God, in my understanding of Jesus. Back to my face. The details of all of the commitments and how they ranked with each other and the statistics and the numbers for each I do have, but I wasn't going to present them to the church as a whole because it's too much information all in one go, and because it would cloud, I think, the nuggets, the treasure that there was there to find. And I don't know what your first thoughts are as you look at that, perhaps as part of our church or from outside of it. Does that look and feel like where your church might be? What's become clear for us in this exercise is that God is speaking to us. God is nudging us. God is holding us. God is affirming us. We are good at caring. We are good at serving. We are good at the things that are the bread and butter of Methodism in some ways, putting ourselves out there in the community for ourselves and each other, doing practical things that show love and care and help. But there are some gaps. There are some places where we've not given enough attention, or we've confused our caring and our serving and our helping with the whole of discipleship, the whole of following Jesus. You see, there is something fundamental about the connection between what we learn about our faith, what we learn about Scripture and how we piece together our understanding of God and Jesus and the church and the world. There's something fundamental about that and its connection to the confidence we feel in living our faith and in talking about Jesus with others. Talking about faith, long before it's talking about Jesus. Because if you go back into the videos, when we looked at evangelism, I said quite clearly there, evangelism is not trotting out a case for the existence of God. It is about talking about life in a way that brings the story of our faith and its impact, its value, its gift in our lives into conversation in a way that others might relate to, because we're talking about life, not about propositional truths or belief, but about experience and about community and about what it means to be part of the church community, living our lives around the story of Jesus as we have it in our life. So there's lots to take heart at. There's lots to be grateful for in this exercise. There's more to unpack, and we'll spend some time doing that over the next while as well. But those are the take-home things for us. Going forward, it seems clear that we have work to do. And some of that work is about the way that our church stands up for others, the way that our church gives generously and lives generously towards those who are less fortunate, those who are oppressed, those who are just maybe not living with the freedoms and the opportunities that we do. At the same time, there is work for us to do when it comes to our own private devotional lives. I'm not sure private's the right word, just personal. Why do we not feel as a congregation that we're that confident about prayer, about the way that we are in relationship with God ourselves? And then when it comes to learning about our faith and sharing that with others, the work of evangelism, the curiosity that should be there, I hope, in all of us, that is about how the Bible got to be as it is and what it means for us to believe what we do and how we unpack that and where the edges are and where our questions and our skepticism and our wondering and our not knowing comes into play. So I hope for those of you who are in our church, this has been a really fruitful exercise for you, just for you, as you get to know yourself a little better in the priorities that are yours to sift and sort when it comes to faith and God and Jesus and our church as an expression of that in the world, in our little corner of it. But for us as a congregation, in the midst of lots of bewilderment over the state of the world, and perhaps with all of these commitments crossing so much of life, we do have some focus going forward, and God has spoken to us, and we can rejoice in that, even though we know that in its affirmation brings with it work to do and travelling to continue. And I guess I want to end by reminding us all that the preface to all of these commitments is, as far as we are able, with God's help, we will pray daily. We will share our faith with others. We will serve those in our community and beyond. We will challenge injustice. We will worship with others regularly. All of these things are prefaced by those words, as far as we are able, with God's help. And so, as far as you are able, with God's help, I hope and pray that whichever of these commitments feels like home, you rest in that and you enjoy expressing that and being in that. Whichever you're afraid of, you perhaps have the courage with others to face, even just to name. It helps so much in a church when someone says, I don't know about this, and what does that mean? And frankly, I'm not sure about this, I'm afraid of that. It opens up the possibility for others to say, you know what, I feel like that too. How can we talk about that? How can we encourage each other? What can we learn together? What can we do to face our fears? And then also our curiosity, the gaps, the unknowns, the places where we want to know more, we want to explore more, we want to do more. In our church's life, this has been a really helpful exercise. And so I want to say thank you to Andy Fishburne and the Evangelism and Growth team in our connectional office in our church's life across the whole of Great Britain for the imagination to come up with a tube map and these words and this way of exploring all that it means for us to be following Jesus. We don't have to get it right, but we can't stand still or sit down or just be as we are, or think that we can go back to where we have been before and that somehow the church will be alive in ways that it is not now. It doesn't feel alive. Those things are not real. Going forward, we have to innovate and adapt and continue to ask what it means for us to speak the language of others, to invite them into our space in a way that feels like home for them, to talk about life, to be real and honest and authentic with each other in a way that's compelling and inviting, and to do so knowing that the love of God surrounds us and the gift of God is this life we live and that we have the privilege of sharing with each other. So thank you to those who've taken part in this exercise as part of our family's life. Hope it's been helpful, and we move on from here. And if you've plowed through all of these videos, well done. Have an extra biscuit next time you have a cup of tea. And if you want to use them in any way as part of any other context in any other church's life, you're welcome to do so. And if you want to look at any of the resources we've used, you're welcome to be in touch with me through our church's website, and I'll share all the resources that I've prepared and all that we've used as part of exploring this together. So God bless you. We're in Advent, we're heading for Christmas. I hope that it is a season of not just darkness and light, but birth and rebirth for you, for your loved ones, and for all of us as we carry on traveling with God. Take care.